Hello. G'day. Welcome to Q&A. I am not Tony Jones. I am Tom Gleeson. I'm going to be filling in for Tony Jones. Tony Jones is a respected journalist. I am a comedian who doesn't give a shit. I can be loose with the truth. I can be biased. I can say whatever I want. This is an absolute fucking treat. Now, if you want to play along, use the hashtag if you're a millennial who's too afraid to yell out in the room. If you're a gutless fucking keyboard warrior, just use the hashtag. You can see it behind me. Hashtag Quanda, SITG, but I prefer the abuse through a microphone. So we will be throwing around a, what's it called? Mic box. There's a microphone in there and you can ask questions from the audience. That would be wonderful. Now, just to introduce all the panellists, I'd like to start on the far left, my far left. We have the
I might note from their perspective, I'm on the far right.
I know. And, yeah. All right. Don't talk until you're introduced.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Oh. Just thought we'd establish the ground rules.
All right, okay. All right. Four Corners is filming. If you swear, it won't make the cut.
Good, that's the idea.
Oh, good. All right, cunt. Okay, now... so we've got shadow tourism, infrastructure, transport, cities and regional development, and also Shadow Minister for all kinds of made-up portfolios, Anthony Albanese. Give him a round of applause. And next along I have Chris Gatford. Chris runs Hacklabs, a Sydney-based firm of ethical hackers who spend their days breaking into companies' computers for a living. Better still, the companies pay Chris to do it. Chris has a bunch of acronyms after his name: CISSP, CSEPS, MCSE, CCSA, and used to teach a course called Extreme Hacking. So don't try this at home. Round of applause for Chris joining the panel, in charge of all things tech. Next up we have Greens leader and I presume Australian citizen, Richard Di Natale. Give him a round of applause for turning up after a very, very tough week. Next up, we have Marcy Wheeler. She is the top US blogger on misdeeds and inner workings of the White House, the FBI, CIA, NSA. Marcy reports on the underbelly of deep state. When she's not meeting courses in darkened car parks, she's wading through spook and hack claims to understand what really happened with America's 2016 election. She tells it like it is, including infamous references to White House blowjobs on national TV. She comes from Beer City, USA, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and but her tweets are all hers at Empty Wheel if you want to follow her. Please welcome Marcy Wheeler. Thanks for coming along. And finally, the punching bag from the Coalition.
My Pope mobile is parked out the back.
The member for Bowman, Liberal MP, Andrew Lamming. Could you please welcome him to the room? Normally on Q&A they point out that the audience has been selected and half vote Labor and half vote for the Coalition and next to nobody votes Greens. But here the mix is very different. Round of applause if you voted for the Coalition. All right, that's what you're in for. Just so you know where you stand, and I just don't want your self-esteem to be crushed right from the outset.
Throw her the microphone.
All right, anyway, let's get straight into it. First of all, I wanted to start with a question from Audrey from Fitzroy. Where's Audrey? Over here. You've got a microphone over there, I believe. Yeah, here we go. Use your outdoor voice, Audrey.
Hi, I've got a question for Chris. You hack into computer systems as part of your day job. How easy is the typical network to penetrate? And how long does it take? Is it a few hours or more like days?
Ooh. Great question. Great question,
Yeah,
Audrey.
great question.
Any customers in the audience? Oh, no, okay. All right, so it depends on how much they're willing to spend and how big the environment is, basically, I guess, in a nutshell. But most organisations in Australia, unfortunately, are much easier than you would believe. It's because here we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about security in Australia. We haven't really had a lot of support either in trying to get people thinking seriously about security and what they do with their systems.
Okay, good answer.
You
I
didn't
have no
answer the
idea what you
question,
meant,
though.
but
How long?
Sorry?
How long?
Yeah, if you're a Big Four bank, many weeks. If you're a small organisation, it tends to be between 4 and 5 days, typically.
okay. So, have you been spying on any of us today?
I might need the evidence later on and the ammunition, so I'm hanging on to it.
Oh, okay. All right. It's only nude photos of me and my phone. Nothing to worry about. Okay, now I believe I have a question from B. Where's B? B? Is B there?
Yeah, this is for Marcy Wheeler. You share with the US president a Twitter persona that's active, loud, and often surprising. How much has this direct-to-the-people communication channel changed the order of things?
But mine is logical. You know, I live in what is affectionately called in the United States flyover country, which means I'm really far away from DC. And having a Twitter account means that people in DC have to listen to me, which is a bit of fun. So that, I think, changes. I work on surveillance. I work on stuff like that. And I actually get staffers from Congress calling me up, cold calling me and saying, these lobbyists in town don't know what they're talking about. Can you tell me what they're talking about? And that's all from my Twitter feed. So there must be something of value there.
Yeah, so...
and it's logical.
You were alluding to this before when I was chatting to you backstage, that you almost like live in constant fear that you're not on your phone now. Do you feel anxious because Donald Trump might have said something stupid, like as we are here?
Donald Trump says his stupid things in the morning, so we're past that time of day. And maybe
so now
later
you
in the
can
night.
prepare,
Like we all assume it's when he's taking his morning shite that he's tweeting out those crazy things. Because that's the only time he gets his phone by himself. So that's the secret. If we fixed his diet, he might stop tweeting like that.
Yeah. But when he first got voted in, were you waking up every day like in a panic, like, oh, what the fuck's he done now? Like, how did...
I still am.
Oh, you still are?
No, that's not going to end anytime soon.
You haven't relaxed yet?
No, I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to see what he did stupid, last night. So.
Yeah, okay. Now, Andrew, you represent the government. And so how do you deal with someone like Donald Trump? Like, he's an obvious whack job, I can say that, because I hold no position. My only qualification is that I'm woke. But, like, how do you deal with the fact that, like, you obviously as a person know that he's an absolute nut job but can never say that in public, but how do you work around that as a human?
As a human, and I think Albo will agree, I mean, our greatest fear as politicians is anonymity, boredom and greyness. Trump has made politics sexy again. I mean, I wake up just like everyone else and say, what is he going to do next? I mean, at least the world is a more fun place with Donald Trump walking on this earth.
Yeah, I know, it's just fun with his finger hovering around like the nuclear arms button. It's so hilarious. We could all die. It's so much fun.
There's a "you're fired" line in here somewhere, I think.
Yeah, but what about you, Anthony? I mean, like, you are going to win the next election and form government. I'm just making a pretty predictable prediction.
And be the leader.
He might even be Prime Minister. Who knows? But... like, again, like, how do you deal with Trump? Like,
with trepidation.
Yeah, but how do you get by? Like, how do you temper your language?
Well, you've got to deal with who was elected. So we have an alliance with the US. We've got to deal with him. But that doesn't mean that you're uncritical about it. He scares the shit out of me. And I think it's of some concern that the leader of the free world thinks that you can conduct politics through 140 characters on Twitter overnight.
But that's very exciting because you are in a position where it is feasible that you'll one day meet him. So would you say to his face, you scare the shit out of me? Like, you can do that.
I'll probably be more polite than that, but I have to deal with people in his government too, and I'm polite to them. Tony Abbott was the Prime Minister. I was polite to him.
Yeah.
More polite than his own coalition colleagues.
Yeah. No, I know. When Tony Abbott was in charge, he didn't scare the shit out of me. He just funded my existence because he was so hilarious.
Always a rainbow.
Yeah, it's always a rainbow. Now, I want to ask you we got to deal with this, Richard. It has not been a great week for the Greens. You've lost both your co-deputies because they were, what would you call them, dual citizens, and they didn't realise that. I'm guessing there are a lot of Green voters here because it's a fucking music festival. And, like, to some degree, these are your people. That's the truth of it. Like, the part that gets me about this is a big part of running government is filling out forms and paperwork. Like, if you can't even do that, like, what hope do you have? Like, how do you reassure your followers that you know what the fuck you're doing?
Oh, look, good people stuffed up. Simple as that. And you know, Larissa's case, she was 11 months old when she came. Her folks were Aussie. She was told she was an Australian citizen. She wasn't a Canadian citizen. But you know, we should have triple checked. And you just got to learn from it and move on. You know, that's all you've got. And I think the party's really pulled together. I'm really confident that we're going to come out of it bigger and stronger.
I've just called Malcolm. We're happy to make her an ambassador, mate. Just which country was it?
What's that?
We'll make her the ambassador.
Yeah, that's right. Canada.
Yeah, but I heard you say that on the news the other night, and it didn't really move me. Like, how do you convince these people that you know? Like, you just say it's a stuff up, but it's really key. It means that they were never senators. Yep. Like, that's a really big issue. Like, how do you make these people think, no, you're across your shit?
You do a thorough review and you make sure you fix it. You own up to it, you come clean, and you fix it up. And I've got to tell you, I reckon there might be a few other people who are in the same boat.
Yeah.
Just quietly, I suspect there are a few other politicians on all sides. The difference is, of course, we came clean. I don't know that they will.
Yeah. Come on, Richard. That's disingenuous, to be fair. People sign a form saying that they're citizens of Australia and not of another country. So you can't just slur the whole parliament and say, I reckon there are others.
But Albo, it's actually about
Name
knowing
them.
it. I'll give you an example, right? So
I'm Tasmanian. Does that count?
By the way, I'm confused by this because nobody in Trump's White House can file a form or their own disclosures, and they're running the rest of the world. So maybe you guys could come work for Trump, and it'll be a vast improvement.
You got to know you're a citizen first. So, for example, in my case, my folks are both Australian citizens, but they're both born in Italy. Yeah. Now, under Italian law, that makes me an Italian citizen. Now, I'm lucky enough to have had a passport, and I went and renounced it, you know, over 10 years ago. But if I didn't have an Italian passport, I was born in Australia, my folks were Australian, they were both born in Italy, and yet that would have made me a dual citizen under Italian law. So every country's different. Yeah. That's not to make excuses. It was a stuff-up.
It sounded heaps like an excuse.
No, it's not an excuse. It was a stuff-up, and we've got to fix it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can grant you this. I joined all the political parties last year. At the same time, I joined them all on Australia Day at the exact same time. So when I answered the question, are you a member of another political party? The answer was no. Of course, it hadn't gone through yet. But out of all the political parties I joined, the Coalition didn't let me in. Straight away, I got refused because I'd been making fun of Tony Abbott too much. And then I reapplied because I said, now that you've punted him, you know, and I'm a taxpayer, can I get involved? And they still said no because I worried I was making fun of them too much. Labor Party didn't notice, I'm still a member. The Greens picked up on it. The fucking Greens noticed, so they do some paperwork correctly. But I'm still a member of the Labor Party. They got no idea that I'm also a member of One Nation. It's weird.
Can we swap you out for Larissa, mate?
I've still got David Leinhelm sending me desperate emails every fucking day for me to donate money. Anyway.
They took Latham, mate.
Oh, God. The fucking anti-party. All right. Any questions from the audience, by the way? Just put up your hand. I feel like I haven't really done you any respect. Here we go, down the front.
Hi.
Hi.
I currently live in Brisbane, and I have seen a lot of the work that Larissa has done there to help the progressive cause. I was wondering, if she renounced her citizenship, would she be able to run again for the Greens, or is that no longer an option? Or what are you guys considering doing with that valuable resource that you have now?
Really good question. Short answer is yes, she could renounce, and I'm hopeful she's going to do that very soon. In fact, she might have already started that process, and I reckon she'll be back soon, bigger and better than ever before. So, you know, like, you want to stop that. You want to stop that Adani coal mine. You got to have Greens in Parliament and Larissa in Queensland. We've got to keep Larissa so we can make sure that polluting, jobs-destroying project never gets off the ground. She's been a champion on gender equality. She's been, you know, a warrior on the environment. We desperately want her back. and I think she'll be back before too long. That's my hope.
And I can confirm, I saw her eating breakfast this morning and she was eating pancakes, and the waiter said, "Would you like maple syrup?" and she said no. So she's already deeply committed. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, right there in the centre. Here we go.
G'day.
G'day.
So, at odds, I've generally always voted Liberal, who I believe have a good economic record. But
Great
I find their current social policy abhorrent. The Greens hit all the right notes in terms of social and environmental policy, but I have the doubt about their ability to govern fiscally. Labor has had the opportunity to make financially responsible social and environmental change, which would ultimately secure ours and our children's future. But we're too caught up in political games to lead well. A significant number of people here at Splendour are socially and environmentally conscious and reasonably well paid. So why should we vote for any of you?
Now, at this point, Tony Jones would say, "I'll take that as a comment," but I'll say, "Cool question," and throw it to the panel. I'll just start with Anthony first of all, if you could answer that question. Because essentially you're saying, in short, a lot of people are conscious about social issues but worried about fiscal responsibility, and you don't really feel like necessarily anyone represents both those things. I feel that Anthony's going to say that he does, but could you...
Very perceptive of you, Tom. I am going to say that. I'm going to say that Labor does put forward an environmental program that is responsible, that's about taking action on climate change, that's about good social policy that recognises that we need to remove discrimination on the basis of gender, ethnicity, sexuality across the board. But also that we have an economic program. The truth is that there are two alternative governments, Andrew's mob and my mob. They're the options. We believe that the government, market forces left alone, create inequality. The market doesn't have a conscience, and that you need government intervention to ensure that, yes, there's economic growth, but that the benefits of that growth are distributed fairly. So hence that's why we regard issues like education as opportunity lifting, health for all with the universal healthcare system with Medicare at its centre, why we regard the national broadband network, fibre to the home, as being as essential in this century as access to water and energy have been in the past. I think that we are the party that will... our promises have to add up as well. There's scrutiny for us, and we've taken some tough decisions over areas like capital gains tax and negative gearing to address housing affordability. And we'll have more tax measures aimed at making sure that those who can afford to pay more do pay more, and that those people who are currently paying more than their fair share, that is average PAYE earners, get to pay a little bit less, and we'll be announcing those over the coming months.
Okay, there are people coming down on pills who are drifting, so but that's okay. That's okay. It was all fascinating stuff.
What do you mean?
I just Panadol and Advil or something. You said you care about the environment, but Bronte Wish Wilson on Twitter says, "Why support Adani then? Why do you support Adani?"
Well, the truth is that Labor doesn't support a single dollar of taxpayers' money going to the Adani coal mine. We've made that very clear. Well, the Adani coal mine is approved under the EPBC Act. There isn't, and if Richard's honest, well, it was approved. That's the truth. It was approved not by us, under the Act that's there, under the current government. There's no vote in the Parliament to stop Adani. And one of the things that happens in politics from time to time is, stop this, end this. It's a really good slogan. But what does it mean? The truth is
it means that it stops.
Well, there are, but the Commonwealth government is governed by laws. The same laws that mean that you can't be citizen of another country or you lose your job are there for other things as well. And there is no vote in the Parliament to approve the Adani mine. That's the truth of the matter. No vote in the Commonwealth Parliament.
But why do I get the feeling that no matter who's in power, it's just going to happen anyway? Why do I get that feeling? See, because I'm a journalist, I can just talk about my feelings.
Well, I think if you look at
Don't need facts.
If you look at the finances of the project, you'd get the opposite view, because it's very clear that it doesn't stack up financially, that they require all of these subsidies. The subsidies we don't support being given, and that without that, it won't happen. And, you know, if it stacked up, it would have happened already, is my view. I mean, it's been going on for some time, and either a project stacks up financially or it doesn't. They can't get financing of this project. They don't have financing of this project.
Representing the government, I'm guessing you're for the coal mine. And also, like, this is obviously a pretty hostile crowd, so I'm just really fascinated to watch you justify it to them.
But if you're going to throw things, give me warning, okay?
Yeah.
I wanted bulletproof glass, but
All right.
look. In short, you're quite right. If you want to put a shed in your backyard, you need an approval, and a mine is no different. And the great frustration for, I think, all of us is that we can all think of a dozen reasons why Adani is a bad thing, right? But none of those dozen things are sufficient to halt this approval process, unfortunately. And I'm
called.
Well, sorry, I'm trying to explain.
Let him speak.
Have you heard of the Great Barrier Reef,
And
Andrew?
all of the because there's no box.
Oi.
Yeah.
We've got to let him speak.
There is no.
Only I cut him
box.
off.
For all of those very good reasons that all of you hold dearly to, none of them are a box on the form they have to complete. And that's why you have this frustration that regardless of a compendium of reasons why this mine might be a bad thing, fundamentally, under the laws, an application can be made to the Queensland Government. We just look at the environmental element of it before it's handed to the Queensland Government. But we are also in knee-deep because we are allowing them to access a fund that will allow resources to build a rail line there. And that's really where the federal rubber hits the road. And at that level, they simply have to show that economically that is going to have dividends to that region, not just the mine. There will be other users of that rail link, and ultimately they have to pay every cent back with interest. So I want you to know why you're frustrated, why you shake your head, is that for all of the reasons that you may hate Adani, none of them are a sufficient condition to stop the mine. And that's the frustration for you.
All right.
Well, the laws currently would allow it, and would allow it in every country in the world.
Yeah, it's I hate to say it, but I have a feeling that everything that's said in this tent is not going to make a difference to the history of the planet. But anyway, we will enjoy the discussion nonetheless. I'm guessing you want to weigh in on it, Richard, given your big, obvious T-shirt.
I'll start with the question which was about social issues. So we've got to have marriage equality and have it now, right? That's the first thing.
What are you guys for that? This is weird. I can't pick you people.
We have to get those desperate people languishing in offshore prisons out of there and bring them to Australia right now.
See, Andrew, that's how you get a clap. It's not hard.
We've got to have a treaty with our First Nations people and start making real progress. And Tom mentioned drugs before, but I came to this gig as a medical doctor. We haven't got a war on drugs, we've got a war on people, right? We've got to start treating it like it's a health issue. We've got to make sure that some young kid who needs help because they've got a problem with drugs gets it, and we've got to stop using it as a way of locking up innocent people who are doing nothing that should be classified as illegal. So let's get serious and get real about drugs as well. But look, the bottom line is you mentioned...
Oh, by the way, just so you know, Four Corners is recording this for a story about the Greens, so he's got to... Yeah, it's a big performance.
You mentioned...
He's got to get it all on tape.
You mentioned economics. You don't have an economy unless you've got a healthy environment. We've got the whole thing back to front, right? We don't... You get all this stuff about Adani. I mean, if that mine gets built, we end up with this climate bomb, we lose a Great Barrier Reef, houses go underwater, and we miss these massive opportunities that come with making the transition to a renewable energy economy. You get investment, you go around regional Australia right now, there are wind farms, solar farms popping up everywhere. We've got Elon Musk, who I heard was here yesterday, who's going to be building a massive battery installation. That's what the future looks like, and that's what our economic future looks like. And look, just let me finish.
All right.
If Bill Shorten said, we don't support the mine, we're going to do everything we can, we're in government, that would kill the mine straight away. Dead. The mine would be dead. Bill Shorten has it in his power right now to say, we are not going to support in any way, shape or form Adani. We give up on the Liberals because they're a lost cause, but that could be stopped, and it could be stopped tomorrow. And that's why we've been out there today, door knocking to people, letting them know how critical it is that that mine never gets built.
Okay. So, is your plan to you close down Adani and you close down all the coal mines in Australia? You get rid of them because they're hurting the planet, and so what happens is there are no coal-fired power stations in the entire nation, and power prices go through the roof, which is brilliant because then people use less of it, and so therefore that's better for the environment. And so we all sit at home,
coal's on the way
warming ourselves up against a candle.
Coal is on the way out. Coal is on the way out.
Yeah.
What we're arguing about is the timeline. Coal's gone. The economics of it don't stack up anymore. We're getting more renewable energy built now across the world than we're getting fossil fuels. So the economics have shifted 180 degrees. The question is, are we going to do it in time so that we actually save the planet? Renewable energy is jobs rich, investment. It's a no-brainer. And countries around the world recognise this. It's just here in Australia with both the government, and it has to be said, the Labor Party who took money out of the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, who have browned down the renewable energy target, we're dragging our heels. So we're turning our back on what's a massive economic opportunity as well. And the final thing to say is the government's own review showed that when you've got more renewable energy in the system, prices come down rather than go up.
But the thing for me is, like, when you vote in an election, like it's Labor or Liberal, that's the way it works, right? That's who gets the main prize.
That's just not
no,
right,
but it's
Tom.
like voting Green is like someone going heads or tails, tossing a coin. You go Green. You're never going to win the toss. So,
hey,
so what? My serious question to you is: how do you achieve all these things from the sidelines?
How do you think we've got the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, big green bank? We've got the Australian Renewable Energy Agency. Right now, billions of dollars of money going into research, because when we had Greens elected in the lower house of Parliament and the balance of power in the Senate in 2010, must be said with a Labor government, what we achieved was some of the most effective climate laws anywhere in the country. We've got billions of dollars flowing now into renewables because the Greens were in the balance of power in both the lower house and the Senate.
With due respect to your one member of the House of Representatives, it did have something to do with
and 9 in the Senate.
It did have something to do with our 72 members of the House of Representatives hang on. As well. And the truth is, when I was the environment spokesperson, the renewable energy target was 2. We adopted, when I was the spokesperson, 20 by 2020. It was ambitious. We adopted the emissions trading scheme that would be in place today had the Greens in the Senate voted for it. Had you voted for it, it would still be in place today. We'd have a price on carbon permanently. We wouldn't have had all that we had with Rudd and Abbott and all of that.
By the way, I just want to point out that this is going beautifully because my plan was, I thought if I can get Labor and the Greens to turn on each other, I won't have to speak anymore.
No, look,
so
all that was achieved with the Labor
slug
government.
it out, guys.
I mean, Albo's right, it was achieved with the Labor government, but just remember, before that 2010 election, Julia Gillard said, our climate policy is to have what's called a citizens' assembly. With no renewable energy target,
ETS
no
had
price.
fallen because you hadn't voted for it, Richard.
No carbon tax.
At least be honest
There
about
will be
it.
no carbon tax under a government I lead. We saw the Greens get balance of power in both houses. We saw a committee established, and what came out of that was a price on pollution, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, a green bank, and a whole range of other energy efficiency measures. That was because we had the Greens at the negotiating table making sure we got outcomes.
All right. Now, just I want to bring you in again, Marcy, because I feel like you've had a bit of an absence.
Because whatever you guys do in Australia, Trump is still going to screw it up at a global level.
Yeah. No, well, I wanted to ask you about that because Trump is quite famously pro-coal. Like, what are you seeing over there?
Trump is anti-science, right? So it doesn't even get to the coal level. It's like let's find the stupidest.
But I
thing
saw that he was celebrating
the
the reopening of some new coal mines. Like, is the cynicism in the US as big as it is in Australia?
Well, for coal in the U.S., the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is from Kentucky, and he would have some say over whether Trump ever gets impeached. One of the first things Trump did was hire Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao. She's one of the few sane cabinet members he has, which is saying something. And then the other thing that Trump did is start sucking up to coal, because he needs to keep Mitch McConnell on his side to stay. Because the Republicans, frankly, don't like Trump all that much. They would much prefer the vice president to be president. And I think Trump may not realize anything else about government, but he does realize how to avoid being told he's fired by the rest of the Republican Party. And the way he does that is stays in good with Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is from a coal state, and that's what it's all about. It's not, that's how he thinks.
Yeah. Now, just getting back to, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party are both pro-coal. To a degree, right?
Well, it's just not true. It's just not true. It's the Labor Party.
You're both fun, but you both get
Elon Musk.
You both get huge donations from the Minerals Council.
That's not true. That's just bullshit. The Minerals Council do not donate money to the Labor Party. It's just not true. Just not true. And in terms of, you spoke about Elon Musk and what's happening. Jay Weatherill is a Labor Premier. There are no Greens that I know of in the South Australian Parliament. There might be in the upper house. I don't know. There certainly aren't any relevant ones. In terms of in the lower house, he governs in his own right, and they are leading the country in renewables.
No, I know that you say that, but it's not like the Labor Party that's in charge in Victoria. That like when the Hazelwood coal mine gets shut down, they're not tap dancing and going, "This is the best thing ever to happen for the planet." They're being very quiet about it because they know about the jobs that are being lost. You can't deny that the Labor Party is pro-coal.
Well, I do deny that.
You're not anti-coal.
We are pro-renewables and pro the future. And if you look at where we are doing, if you have a price on carbon, which is what we support, and you have a proper renewable energy target, then you will have that transition to renewable energy. Can you do it overnight? No, you can't. No, you can't.
I thought you could.
And they know that.
But I want to ask the question, though, because it would seem that coal's being phased out, right? Like, do you not worry that, I don't know, one day you'll be having to explain to your grandkids that you're pro-coal and they just won't understand it? It'd be like, I don't know, once upon a time, people trying to explain to their grandkids that they own slaves, and it'd be like, well, that's a bit fucking weird. And you go, well, it was different back then. Like, how are you going to... How would you honestly justify that to your grandchildren?
So what you do is you need to know that if you're going to close a coal-fired power station at state level, because they open and close them, they give us warning. In that time, you need to have the other options ready to go so that you don't have an energy crisis and a shedding disaster and then a price jump. You need to make sure that gas stays in the country and doesn't get exported for a few cents a megalitre, which has led to the prices we're all paying. Once we get power prices under control, you're in a much better position. And then, look, lastly, I think where the Big Easy was trying to get to was that he's source agnostic. So long as the best options and the best technology and the best scientific understanding of sources of energy are applied, we legislate a renewable energy target, we legislate to support Paris emission cuts, and we keep ratcheting them every year. Slowly but surely, you get there. So, we're going to do it. And to be honest, if you're a small infant in Bangladesh burning dung because it's the only way to have any light in the hut, that's why you want Adani coal. Okay? 90 million people don't want to burn dung in their house. Yeah, they're the ones who want the power from coal.
It's such a great argument that the Minerals Council handed out with their bullet points. And I've heard it many times. Actually, I've actually heard it at their functions, and it's a great.
We could give them solar panels.
What?
We could just distribute solar panels through Bangladesh.
No. But I know what you're saying. But
you don't pay enough tax too.
But also, we're Australia. We've never given a shit about the third world. Why would we start now? So.
Well, because they're putting the dollars in.
Okay.
That's the point.
I feel like you've been left out there a bit, Chris. So do you really enjoy eating lumps of coal? What?
You know, as a Kiwi, I didn't actually think I was eligible for this panel.
Oh, okay.
I'm a dual citizen too, so I'm doubly excluded.
Yeah, I feel like we've given coal a hammering. Just out of curiosity, actually, who put up your hand if you understand you're quite happy with the idea that you need a slow transition from coal to renewable? If you're happy with that, show of hands. What about who wants it to stop straight away? Oh no, and then a lot of people just are afraid of their own opinion. Okay, no worries. All right, any other questions from the audience? I feel like all right, sorry, I thought you... Maybe over here. Yes? Here we go. Here's your microphone.
Thank you. I've just got a question for Chris, because I think last week the government announced that he was going to look at legislation to force the likes of Apple and Google and Facebook to give the security agencies backdoors into all of our devices and the internet. Can you tell us whether this is going to make us collectively less or more safe, and if so, why?
Yeah, good question. So definitely, if it ever went ahead, and the likelihood of that actually having any chance of success is very, very small, and it would only be applicable for Australian organisations, because the overseas guys are just going to completely ignore it. When I saw Albo here on checking Twitter, and I'm assured that these guys are going to want to make sure their data stays private as well. So, very unlikely that I think they would ever get over. But if it did, yes. I mean, in the worst possible scenario, backdoor is a backdoor. There's no way to disguise it.
Can I just jump in there and just say there's absolutely no intention to backdoor, okay? I know this term's floating around.
It's a front door then, like they say in the States?
Hey, I don't care whether you lift the roof off, but under current law in most developed economies, if there is a search warrant to examine property for the purposes of solving a crime sufficient to get the warrant, you have to provide it. So we will simply be placing an expectation that if as a government we want a search warrant on person X because we have valid grounds, we don't need to de-encrypt anything. We either go to the device before it encrypts or go to that one after it's de-encrypted, and the provider has to assist law enforcement agencies with provision. No backdoors.
Do you make door makers and safe makers unlock their
the roof
safest
off,
for
separate the walls. I don't care. I'm agnostic about how they do it. They must provide it under law.
No, but you don't make safe makers unlock their safes for you.
I don't care.
You send somebody who's very good at unlocking safes to unlock the safe. The maker of the safe doesn't have to make their safe weaker. The maker of a front door doesn't have to make their front door weaker. You find somebody else to unlock it.
Well, why wouldn't the safe maker simply unlock the safe? We just ask them to for one person.
That's not who you ask them to. You go to the law enforcement safe cracker and they do it. Chris probably can do that because that's what pen testers do.
We'd rather work with them than against them.
Well, correct. I mean, look, you don't ask the trusted party. You don't go to the trusted parties who've got trust and the public has trust in them to then go, can you please give me a way into this device? Because the public will lose trust in that provider and they'll just move on.
Just make Chris open it.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions on cybersecurity? Put your hand up. Cybersecurity in general. Up the back, there's someone there. Throw the mic cube. That'd be great. How good would that be in the actual televised Q&A if that clocked someone in the head?
Can I keep the cube?
Yeah.
Yep.
You can eat it.
I've already eaten. It's just more on the end-to-end encryption stuff. Basically, I mean, if I encrypt a message and send it to my mate who has the decryption keys, are you going to come after me with a rubber hose and beat me until I give you the decryption keys? Or, because there's no one in the middle that's going to have the decryption keys. Like, you can chase whoever you want, but they're just not going to be able to decrypt it. There's not enough technology. If I use, 2096-bit RSA, blah, 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 blah. But are you going to come after me and,
So are you directing this question at Andrew? Because you're wearing sunglasses and at the moment you just kind of look really paranoid.
Well, yeah, it is, yeah. I mean, but if anyone could jump in.
I feel like
I just want answers, damn it.
I'm worried, you got sunnies on, I'm worried you're just talking into the middle distance and there happens to be a cube in front of your mouth.
I'm just hoping someone picks it up,
All right, you're worried about the government going after you, is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
So I thought I answered that. I don't have your expertise, but my understanding is that before a message encrypts or after it de-encrypts at the other end, they're the two logical places where you'd intercept a message depending on who you're chasing.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Marcy, by the way?
I'm not finished.
Oh, hang on. All right.
Yeah, I mean... basically, if
I often find that, when you do drugs, it makes you want to talk more.
Yeah.
It's fine. I understand it.
Come down.
It also can make people leave. They're like, I can see where this is going.
I'm a bit paranoid. No.
Okay.
Basically, like if I have a message and I encrypt it, like say I'm writing a message right now and I'm encrypting it, you would have to come down here and beat me before I encrypt it.
I'm going to come down and beat you if you don't hand that mic over to someone else.
That's all I want to say. I'm like, there's a very small window with encryption and decryption. Like you can't go after the fact, or you have to during the encryption. Whether it's at rest or in transit, like it's already encrypted in transit.
Oh, hang on. Yeah. Sorry, that's Tony Jones. He just said he's going to take that as a comment. Thanks, Tony.
Fuck.
Question down the front here. We get someone down here, quick. Throw the cube. Down here. Down here. That's great. Here we go.
Okay, it's related to cybersecurity.
Great.
Excellent. Given the Swedish authorities have dropped the action from their side on Julian Assange, would you support Julian Assange coming home?
You're not asking me.
Few Assange fans in.
Question to the panel.
Yeah, okay, we'll ask Andrew first. I mean, as a representative of the government.
And then we'll talk about what happens when the United States puts out an arrest warrant for him, right? Let's jump ahead to that one too.
Look, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I've always been particularly sympathetic to allowing him to come home, but that wouldn't be the prevailing view in my party or, in fact, through a lot of the parliament.
What about the Labor Party, Anthony? What's its view on bringing him home? Or letting him come home?
Buggered if I know what the official view is. But, they had warrants that were about, an alleged assault in Sweden. I think it's reasonable that legal process take its place. I don't think
that's finished. So the Swedish authorities have dropped
Understand that after years and years. I don't know that he wants to come home. So I don't know what our response would be. That's the honest answer.
And also, given his questionable citizenship, obviously you'll have him at the Greens.
I've got a view on that.
Yeah. He could be a senator probably for a little bit.
You've got a vacancy, haven't you, mate?
He does have his own party.
That's right. The problem's the US. So of course he should come home. But the problem is what happens when he gets out of there, and what are the US going to do? And that's the real issue. I mean, going back to that, the question around Donald Trump. He's a lunatic and he's dangerous. And who knows what he would do in terms of, securing this guy's safety. So that's the big issue. And from our point of view, we've been long-standing supporters of his cause. He should never have faced the sanctions he's got from the US.
WikiLeaks kind of helped Donald a bit.
Doesn't matter, they've forgotten that. So
he helped Donald Trump a little bit, WikiLeaks.
Yeah, tons. But
that's the truth.
Our CIA director, who cheered on WikiLeaks publications of Hillary Clinton's emails, one of his very first speech, he said, we're going after WikiLeaks. We are going and treating them as people who exposed CIA agents and what have you. And so I would be surprised if there isn't already an arrest warrant for Assange in Virginia. And certainly all of the people who are in positions of authority in the IC right now, thanks to Trump, thanks to WikiLeaks, thanks to those leaked emails, all of them are now pushing prosecuting Assange in the United States. And so that's going to be the question. Would Australia stand up to the United States to try and prevent that prosecution?
And he's an Australian citizen. He's done the world multiple favours. Where is the support?
Absolutely. It's all about transparency.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure helping Donald Trump get elected was doing the world a favour, but anyway.
Yeah. Another question over here?
That aside, it's the most important thing that's happened in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
Look, my name's James. Andrew, personally, Trump terrifies me. As a young man, to see this potential world leader pull out the Paris Climate Agreement, this is terrifying stuff. We are living the climate crisis right now. My question is, when is Australia going to be the leading clean, green destination on the planet and lead the way? When are we going to step it up and act now?
So we're not at the front of the pack, I'd concede, but we're close to the front of the pack in the climate cuts, mostly because we had some very generous concessions at Kyoto. But the only way we move this forward are global agreements. We're going to have to ride having the US not in them for a few years, potentially. We don't know what will happen, but the next meeting after Paris has had to keep ratcheting down, and we've got to meet as frequently as we possibly can to do that.
Something has kicked off on the main stage because people are leaving, I can see that. It's another session of Q&A. Wait till they get there. It's a whole lot of other politicians and some other comedian ripping into them. It'll be fun. Any other questions? All the way at the back there. all the way at the back.
Yo, all right.
The questions, I must say, in general, they're pretty timid. I mean, you know, your taxes pay these people's wages and you can just rip into them and no one will do anything about it. I don't know why you're not going for it.
All right, so
Except for Chris and Marcy, obviously. Yes.
This is a bit off topic, but...
Oh, shit.
Oh, no. Back to the battery in South Australia, because I'm from Adelaide and I work for an unspecified political party in Parliament House.
Yeah. So that's, you're trying to sound mysterious or you're full of shit?
No, I'm being honest, but I just don't want to get in trouble when I go back to work.
No one here cares.
Yeah, well...
Hey, Four Corners, turn your camera off.
Those things are called cameras.
Yeah.
No comment, anyway.
Okay. So you're an insider in state politics in South Australia.
Yeah, it's boring as fuck. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. I'm guessing you're not going to get a route for the rest of the festival after this. You know that, don't you?
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I know I'm not wrong.
Anyway, the battery that they said that they would make would power 30,000 homes for 1 hour. Do you think that the battery will make any legitimate difference to South Australia at all?
Okay, well, I'll get Richard to answer first because I'm guessing he's for it. So you're saying it would power 30,000 homes for an hour, the battery, if discharged. So you're
That's
just
what
saying...
they said.
You're saying it's a drop in the ocean. What do you say,
Pretty
Richard?
much.
We're on the cusp of this incredible battery revolution. It's happening. It's happening really quickly, and again, right around the world, people are embracing this technology. The price is coming down. Prices are coming down very, very quickly. Batteries are going to be a huge part of the energy solution. So what we're going to end up with, I think, if you cast your mind forward, you're going to end up with households that are mini power stations. They generate their own power through solar panels. They store it. We've got to get a smarter grid where people can shift power through microgrids. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. So batteries are a big part of the solution. More renewables in the system is absolutely critical. Wind, solar and other technologies. We've got to make sure that we get energy efficiency front and centre. We've got to do a lot more in the transport sector, in agriculture. So there are a whole lot of things that need to work together if we're actually going to respond to the climate crisis. It's happening. And what you're now going to see, a number of people have got, for example, power walls installed at home, people who actually become power retailers themselves. And one of the best things about it is you actually take the power away from big energy companies and you empower yourself to generate, to store and to sell and move on power. And that's what the future's going to look like. It's a bit like, you know, you look at a mobile phone 20 years ago and look at what that could do, and now you pick up this mini supercomputer that we've all got in our pocket. That is what's happening in the energy space. It's really exciting, and the fear I've got is that Australia's not going to take advantage of it. We're in the prime, like pole position. Look outside. We've got sun, wind, we've got space, we've got huge technical expertise.
We've got a lot of methane around the fucking dunnies.
Yeah, well,
I could say you could burn that.
Yep, there's. Methane. It's a good power source. And in fact, you go to many other countries, and what they do is, you know, you put your food waste separate from other waste, and what you do is actually generate methane from that through biodigesters. There's a whole lot of technology that's happening right around the world, and we've got to lift our ambition. And if we do that, it's just a good news story.
Okay.
It's like you clean up the planet. People make money, their power prices go down, we're all better off.
All right, just quickly, I mean, obviously you're going to be for it. Andrew, it seems like people from the government were kind of lining up to give Elon Musk a bit of a kicking to say, like, you know, to make that point, it's just one battery, it doesn't really do much. Like, shouldn't the government be for it just because it's private enterprise and it involves innovation, like forgetting the environment and even being a political issue? Shouldn't the government just be excited that he's turned up to do anything?
I'm excited because it's not in my state. I'll be just grabbing popcorn, mate. I mean, this is a big risk for a guy, Weatherall, who was painted into a corner, and he had to do something. He's gone with the battery. It's twice the size of anything ever done in the world, even as a pilot test in the States. But good on him. Let him have a crack. 150 mil. It'll be another 100 mil on top of that for the support and the back end. So $250 million. It lasts 15 years and you've got to chuck it all away. But in that time, he will have got his state back to where the rest of Australia is, which is still relying on fossil fuels, but not having this disaster. Just keeping one power station would have been $8 million a year. He's opted to spend $300 to $400 million and have the battery. It will help, it will fix his crisis, and it might just be world leading, but we just don't know yet.
Okay, all right, over here, a few questions, a few people desperately with their arms up. Yes?
Hi, my question is, it's a bit of a crossover. My daughter was born in Ireland, and until this all happened with the Greens, we didn't actually realise that she was a dual citizen. We just thought that she had Australian citizenship, and so therefore she was an Australian. We kind of thought, well, look, you know, we could renounce her citizenship, but she's also transgender. And this then means that in this country she can't get married. It also means that she misses out on a number of basic rights that people have in her birth country of Ireland. She can actually go over to Ireland and get married, whereas she can't do that here. This week we've also just found out that on a state level, that funding has been dropped from Westmead Hospital for youth services for transgender children. So I guess my question to the panel is this: how seriously do each of your parties take LGBTIQ issues, and when can we see some bipartisan actual government as opposed to political stoushing over the issue of marriage equality and treating all people in this country as equal?
All right. Well, I'll just start with the same-sex marriage issue just because we've got someone here from the government and it would be interesting to hear what he's got to say. It seems to me like the statistics support the fact that the majority of Australians want it. It's a civil rights issue. You know, all the equivalent countries overseas have legalised it. Like it's getting to the point that it's a bit embarrassing that we don't have it, even if you didn't agree with it. Why? I don't want to just get into another circular argument about free vote versus plebiscite. I guess what I want to know is how come, why on earth would Turnbull not just get it over and done with? Because it's just going to happen anyway. Like why wouldn't you just do it? If only for the political gain. Like it would be good. Like you would win politically. I would imagine it'd be a good story for you.
So the answer there is that when you go to elections and you make a commitment, something bigger says that we have to stick with that until we change that policy for the next election.
But I'll stop you there because straight up, like I have heard that argument before, but like both parties always say all kinds of shit during the election, and then just turn it around anyway. So why not lie about something that'll make you popular?
So the answer is that those that are stopping that are absolutely within the party room, as opposed to saying there'll be no carbon tax, but not having to worry about it because everyone in the room actually wanted one. We simply have a reflection of the community. We have people who represent both sides in our party room. So there's about 90 people, and I would say that probably just under half of them would have a conservative view on this issue, and the others would have a progressive view. But when we return to our electorate, let's just sort of try to avoid the yelling at, if you don't mind, because we've got someone from the government right here and we can actually hear what he's got to say. And I feel that I find it incredibly frustrating as well, but I still would like to hear what he has to say. Look, yeah, and I just wish I could give you an answer that you were happy with, but I've struggled with this. So as an MP, I said, and I mentioned this last year, I'm the only MP who said I will poll exclusively and exhaustively every household in my electorate, and I will vote exactly the way the result comes back. Now, some will say, well, you shouldn't even poll, you should go and vote my way, but it comes back 50-50 every time. I live in just a bread and butter, outer metropolitan, hard-working part of Brisbane, and they just keep coming back either side of 50-50, and I will vote the way they vote, and the last one was 44% for, 56 against. Why is it so far from the polls? Because first, it's not a phone poll, all right? Second, it's one vote per household. And third, it's almost impossible for you to rig the system. My suspicion is that 2 out of 3 Australians would just say, I want same-sex marriage now. But only 1 in 3 will cross the road, fill out a form, do something about it. So at the moment, those who are against same-sex marriage are roughly the same number, but they will march on that issue. So my message to you, because at least half of you out there probably feel very strongly, but will you do more than just answer a phone poll? If you do, change the hearts of your community and this thing will be won. But right now, I ask my community, and it's against same-sex marriage in Outer Met Brisbane. And the risk today is that we're moving from this expensive plebiscite to a postal plebiscite being raised by a minister today. If that happens, I'm telling you, this will be a 50-50 vote because too many of you won't be bothered to fill the form out.
Right, so are you essentially saying that you believe that it's a niche issue?
Big issue. But for many people, they say, I'm with you, but they won't fill out a form. They won't turn up on voting day to vote. If it's not a federal election, there'll be no fine, and you have a 70% turnout at a referendum or a plebiscite, and it'll be 50-50 result. You'll be shocked by the result unless you all do something about it.
But it's one of those, for me it seems like it's going to be historic, and when you look around the world and you see all the different countries that have been passed laws to legalise same-sex marriage, it seems historic. It's a thing that people remember forever. It'll be like in 1967, Indigenous Australians getting a vote. Again, it's a bit like I'm trying to get inside your head and work out, would you not be, it's inevitable, it would appear. How are you going to live with the fact that one day you were someone slowing that down? Would that not feel, I don't know, how do you...
So in politics, every issue...
How do you justify it?
So every issue is like that. Everything we vote on represents a status quo that is changed. So this happens to us all the time. It's not a unique issue.
Okay, all right. So what you're saying is you're a hard ass. Pretty much. Okay.
Well,
give everyone a shot at it.
Yeah, we do need to get on with it, and we do need to get on with it with a parliamentary vote. I think that the only impediment is the internals in the Liberal Party. That's the truth. It's not rational. It is in Malcolm Turnbull's interests and in the Liberal Party's interests for them to get this done. If they don't, it will hurt them at the next election. That's why various people in the Liberal Party have been working to sort it out. We changed, in my first term, I moved a private members bill for the entitlements of superannuation to go to same-sex couples, to remove the discrimination. When I raised that in the first term, people in the Labor caucus shuffled in their seat. I found out afterwards that a whole lot of people who didn't know me went up to people and said, I didn't know Albo was gay because, why else would you be raising an issue of same-sex rights in the party room? When we're in government, we removed 84 pieces of discrimination across migration, health, social security, right across the board, everything except for marriage. And guess what? The world didn't end. People moved on. It went through in a bipartisan way. And when change happens and marriage equality is here, I reckon a whole lot of people will wonder what the hell the fuss was about because their rights won't be impeded at all. And Australia, it is embarrassing that we're behind Malta, Ireland, Taiwan. Let's get on with it. Have the vote.
What's the Greens' position quickly?
Well, the Greens have always championed marriage equality. It should have been done a decade ago. But here's the thing I don't get about Andrew's position. Just name another area of discrimination, or what is effectively a basic human right, where you take a poll. Those things aren't subject to opinion polls. That's it. It's a basic... We've got discrimination in law that prevents two people who love each other from marrying each other. And that's not something we should be polling. That's something that's pretty fundamental about our... the rights that every citizen in this country should enjoy. Can I also just say quickly on the question around, I think it was your child who's transgender?
Just one sec. I'll come back to that. I haven't forgotten that.
Yep.
And you got same-sex marriage in place in the US. How are you coping? Is it just?
No, but we got it. I mean, you mentioned that your daughter is a dual citizen with Ireland. So am I. I'm a dual US-Irish citizen, and let's go back. Ireland was one of the first places to vote this in. Not the United States, not the Netherlands. I mean, Ireland, a very conservative country, one of the last places to get divorced, one of the last places to get abortion, still doesn't. So if Ireland can do it, Australia can do it. And what he said is you got to get out there and get active. That's what happened in Ireland. That's how Ireland voted in rights for everyone. So that's what I want to say.
Well, all right. Now, Naomi Higgins, who is on the hashtag, asked me to ask Andrew Lamming what Christopher Pyne was talking about with marriage equality. obviously referring to the secret recording of Christopher Pyne boasting to his moderate mates that they had a way of getting it happening. What's the update on that? What did he mean by that? Was he just full of shit and big noting himself at a private event, or was there an actual move in place to make it happen?
Mate, I wasn't invited, so that probably says something too. Look, it's hard to know. There are people with very strong views on both sides within our parliament, and I mean, if you go back in that Burkean conservative tradition of church, family and state, those that hold strongly to the views that aren't your own have found their way to our party and are a key part of it. They don't just vote for us. They actually work the booths, run the campaigns. They are integrally sort of entwined in everything we do, and Labor has their equivalent on the other side. You can't continue to win elections if you lose your core, and many of those same-sex marriage people have found their way into key positions within the party and help us win and hopefully not lose elections.
Okay, now getting back to the transgender issue, I think really at the heart of it was you were wanting to know what the various different parties are doing for transgender kids. But I'll just narrow in on that one thing so it's not too broad. What has the Labor Party got in place for transgender kids in the form of funding or policy or...?
Well, we support removal of discrimination in terms of transgender children, young people who are going through a difficult time are worthy of support. The other thing is that we support more broadly is education programs, and we've supported that in schools. That's been criticised by some, but it's about treating people with tolerance and with respect. With regard to the cuts, they would be a state government cut, I would assume, in terms of provision of those services. When Labor has been in government, in state government, we've provided, I think, appropriate services.
Okay, and what about the government?
So at state level, there's been a really big push to eliminate that kind of discrimination, but I just don't know the funding situation. I think you refer to Westmead. I'd be surprised if it's a government policy. It may well be a decision about funding a service, because Westmead is basically a centre of excellence in Western Sydney. Perhaps some more context.
And yes, are you further questions?
Can I just say, the Safe Schools program was dropped by the New South Wales government. I appreciate that that is a state-based model, but it took away a lot of protection for kids who are at risk, because a lot of the kids in country areas, and the kids that I have had some contact with in country areas, are no longer able to access a Safe Schools mediator to come in and mediate on their behalf. So I teach in a semi-rural area, and I know that in a lot of the schools in our area, transgender issues are just not canvassed at all, and the rights of gays and lesbians in a school setting have been eroded because of the fact that there is no formula that actually protects them. It is something, of course, that is a state-based thing, but it is something that each of the major parties really need to take a close look at, because if you can't get your act together on same-sex marriage, you at least owe the community our civil rights to make sure that these people are protected the same way as Aboriginals were removed from the Flora and Fauna Act.
So our worry was that
just quickly though, so with the Safe Schools program was thrown out, like, do you think maybe they threw the baby out with the bathwater? Because it was attacked quite savagely by the government. It was quite critical, and it was eventually gotten rid of. Like, maybe you should have just adjusted it and kept the bits you liked that were helping, and
definitely,
not
or broadened the base of it so that it was incorporated into a larger anti-bullying framework. What happened was people picked out little bits of Safe Schools, and it became a touchstone for the right. And then the pressure was enormous. It was announced during the 2013 election by Labor. It was funded by us and launched in early 2014. But eventually it's been federally not continued, and then states are able to continue it if they choose to. So you'll find there are states that do continue it. Schools don't tell you.
Yes.
That's right. And they don't tell you if they're doing it in the school. So in my state of Queensland, you don't know if it's happening. The easy middle ground would have been a broader anti-bullying framework that incorporated this. And with respect, I go to so many schools and they're so aware and in tune on this issue. So I'm really sorry that you haven't had that experience.
No. There are a lot of schools that are very aware and in tune, but the safety net for those schools that are not aware and in tune has been removed. That's the issue. And actually, by removing the same-sex safe schools program, we've actually put those kids in a more vulnerable position than they were before, because now they're outed in a sense, and now they don't have the protective devices behind them. So where I am and my child, we're all right. We're fine. It's not me that's the issue. It's other schools.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your contribution. We're getting close to the end, so any other questions, especially for Chris and Marcy, if you have any questions for them, I'd appreciate that. Let's ask some desperate people up there at the back.
Hi, this is a question for Marcy. I know a lot of people have looked at the idea of what may be the looming impeachment of Donald Trump with excitement. Don't get me wrong, not a Trump fan. Mike Pence terrifies me.
Mike Pence terrifies me too.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, what scenario is better? That Trump stays in with his lunacy, or that Mike Pence takes over after an impeachment with his own unique brand of lunacy? And why do you think that?
His more polished lunacy.
Well, his more polished lunacy, and I said earlier, the Republican Party likes him a lot better. He's a lot closer to the funders of the Republican Party. He actually picked a lot of the cabinet members who are secretly in the wake of this Russian distraction with Trump, dismantling government wholesale. So I absolutely agree with you. Mike Pence terrifies me to no end. I think in the United States, impeachment is actually a crutch for people because, yes, I think there is a decent chance after Trump dismantles parts of government and does a bunch of unpopular things, the Republicans will turn on him and impeach him because they can start afresh with Mike Pence, who they prefer. But I think the Democratic Party is not doing enough to make Mike Pence's policies unpopular, to make, I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which for those of you who know Amway money, Betsy DeVos is our education secretary. She's dismantling education. That's Mike Pence's policy. It's not Donald Trump's policy. And Democrats, I think, are getting distracted, given the impeachment excitement, from actually making the impact of that wholesale dismantling of entire parts of government visible and unpopular throughout the country. So I think that the smart thing to do from the Democratic Party, which is why it's not going to happen, is to really focus the energy on these policy issues that matter to the voters, and let the legal issues around impeachment in Russia happen. Because if the Democrats haven't really done the political work to put up barriers to Pence, then you're right, it's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to get a lot worse for a lot of people in the United States.
So if Trump got shot and Mike Pence was president, would you
Please
feel
don't say that with me on the podium because I'll get in trouble.
Okay. If he was, if he had a heart attack from his dietary habits and died of natural causes, would you be somewhat relieved, even though Mike Pence was going to take over, or would you be equally horrified?
I'd be equally horrified. I mean, the Mike Pence. I mean, we talked about gay rights, right?
Yeah.
On gay rights, Mike Pence is abysmal, is positively abysmal, and the notion that he would be in charge of the country at a time when finally civil rights are changing is horrifying to me. So, but the only answer for that in a country that at least claims to still be democratic is to do the political work to make sure that you're fighting back against that.
Yeah, it'd be all the same weird opinions dressed up in a better presentation style. We know all about that in Australia.
Look, Trump I think is not managing independently right now, right? He's got people he's doing policies for that don't have America's policies in the best interest. But the same is true for Mike Pence, because he is funded by a bunch of oligarchs who are dumping a ton of money into him, and they're the oil people. They're the anti-gay rights people. They're the Christian kind of regressive country people. And so I guess one of the things that we in the United States have to do more than anybody else is get that big money out of politics.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Now, we're getting close to the end because someone has written on the hashtag Quanda SITG hashtag that we've got here. They've said they should replace Quanda with a competitive eating challenge. So I suspect some people might be drifting off. So we'll wrap this up very shortly. Any last minute questions? Any last minute questions? Over here, quick. Throw the cube. There we go. Yes, just here.
Thanks very much. This is a question for Andrew and Chris. Time and time again, counterterrorism agencies have released information that states the terrorists at the heart of the plots that have been in recent times have been on watch lists and were in the knowledge of those agencies. Why, in particular, governments and Australian government, why are we not focusing resources to assess that information in a better form rather than gathering further information that may dilute or pollute the water even further, that we don't get any further with that intelligence?
All right, I'll go to Chris first.
Yeah, I mean, the resources are there. I mean, we have a great offensive and defensive capability in the ASD. In fact, their motto is reveal their secrets, protect ours. So we certainly have some great capability in Australia, but I think it's more of a policy question about why they aren't more active in domestic stuff.
So I think your question is why do we out them and not just continue to keep them on watch list and gather more information?
No, my question is why are we going after more information when the information we have we're not utilising?
I couldn't answer that. I mean, we do just trust law enforcement at a certain level to make those calls. I can't help.
But I think that also impacts the crypto debate, right? The notion is if you unlock everything, then you're going to find those terrorists, rather than if you go into the communities and have good relationships with the communities, which over and over again on terrorist cases is what actually solves the problem. So I think the crypto debate is actually a crutch to avoid saying we need cops in the communities, we need good relationships with these communities so that they'll actually report people who are doing strange things in their communities. So at least in the United States, certainly the UK where they've had some attacks, the issue is where you're doing policing, and crypto is the quick answer that isn't going to get you the terrorists.
Quick question from over here. You had your hand up for a long time, just over here. The woman over here with the arm up. Had a hand up for a while there, being
Hi.
polite. Yes.
How you going?
Good. I'm well, thank you.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm from Perth. I live in a very, very, very unbelievably safe Liberal seat. And I just thought I'd let you know. That's not my question.
Yeah.
My question
Oh, you're just
is,
boasting that you're wealthy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, no.
Fair enough. Good
That's
on you.
everywhere in WA.
Well, you could afford to fly over here, so I presume you didn't drive. Okay, sorry. Yeah, keep going.
My question was to Albo and the Greens as a whole. You say that Trump terrifies you, but what do you think your plan's going to be if/when you get in government in order to deal with that issue as a whole? Because how are you going to obviously go ahead with foreign relations if you say that the leader of the free world terrifies you?
Okay, quick answer.
Well, that was your term, not mine. But
Sorry.
But no, it's okay. But you deal with the people that you have to when you're leading a country. There's a whole lot of people we deal with who we have disagreements with, but the relationship between Australia and the US isn't just about individuals. It's about nation to nation, and it's quite deeper than just who the president of the day is or who the prime minister of the day is. And, we deal with people that we disagree with all the time, but you have to do it civilly and with respect. But we also need to stand up for Australia's own interests, and quite often that will be different from the interests of the United States, and we need to be prepared to do that.
Okay, Richard?
So this isn't just about Donald Trump. It is about our relationship with the US, and the Greens have got a very clear position, and we've had that before Donald Trump was the president, but it's only been heightened since he's become president, and that is we need to have a much more independent, non-aligned foreign policy. At the moment, we follow the US. We followed the US into every single war since World War II. We followed them into the disasters in the Middle East, in Iraq. And what's going on now throughout the Middle East in large part is because of that catastrophic intervention there. So it's not just about Donald Trump, it's actually about the US alliance. And we think we need to completely realign the terms of our relationship with the US, and that means actually saying, well, the alliance as it stands cannot continue. It's a one-way relationship. The world is changing very rapidly. We've got the emerging power, China. We've got this battle now over the South China Sea. We need to recognise that we're, in Asia, we're effectively in Asia, and we have to have a much more global, multilateralist outlook. And this idea that it's all the way with the US, we follow them blindly, effectively act as their lapdog, that's got to stop.
You can support the alliance and not support engagement in wars like Iraq. We did that. As the Labor Party, the Labor leader of the time, Simon Crean, we opposed very strongly in the Parliament the engagement with Iraq.
Can you not remember which leader it was?
I do remember. It was Simon Crean.
You've had a few.
And to be fair, he went and spoke to the troops who were leaving and treated them with that respect. I thought that was a very courageous thing for him to do. So you can have an alliance without just giving a blank cheque to any country.
Okay, all right. Well, that sort of brings us to the end of the Q&A. Thank you so much for coming out. Just to prove that we're not a bunch of old lame people, let's see what band everyone's prepared to see. What band are you looking forward to seeing, Anthony?
I want to see Meg Mac, but I'll be on a plane before then, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. He's down with the kids. What about you, Chris?
Yesterday, the Powderfinger reuniting was awesome.
Oh, there we go. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, I was going to say Powderfinger. I had a fan moment. I sat next to Bernard Fanning at the cafe in Byron, so I was that was a wonderful moment.
That was pretty good. Yeah, everyone's showing their age. What about you, Marcy?
I'm just wandering from stage to stage. I'm the kind of lost foreigner.
Yeah, okay. Also, what's the name of your website again? Should mention if people want to follow your stuff.
Emptywheel.net or at Emptywheel on Twitter, you'll find me.
Yeah, if you want to follow Marcy Wheeler's independent journalism. Andrew, what band are you looking forward to seeing? Which band gets the...
Man, none of these guys are going to go if I say them. AB Original, mate.
Which band is the Coalition endorsed? Who was it?
AB Original, but they're on right now.
Okay, all right, there we go. They all know what's going on. They're down with the kids. Thank you very much. Thank everyone on the panel for giving us their time. Really appreciate you for coming and having a look. Enjoy the rest of your festival.